Yo, I'm coming from that 3-6, so that's why I got them brains spinning. Ain't nobody using blinkers, we ain't good at lane switching. Better get a plane ticket, I ain't flying all you chickens though. Always shoot my shot, better switching off the pick and roll, dishing off the give and go. All my squad is driven, so you can catch us on the road. Promise.
Rip City, are you listening? I'm Christian Gamalian. I'm talking with co-host Austin Caphammer, and this is the Peeps and Plaid podcast. In our final preseason episode, yes, the season starts next week, we are joined by Tara Bowen-Biggs, team mom from the Blazers Edge and Women's Hoops and Talk podcast. How are you doing, Tara?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys. I love being on a guest on someone else's podcast because all I have to do is answer questions.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. We're seriously stoked to have you on. I know Austin and I are big fans of yours. We'll be asking you some questions later on in the podcast, but for now, let's talk some Blazers. By the time the episode is published, the Blazers will have played the Utah Jazz in their second to last preseason game. Unfortunately, we can't cover that tonight. Hopefully nothing of note occurs in that game other than Blazers highlights, improved chemistry, shooting, and defense. But the last preseason game they played was against the Phoenix Suns. I was there with Rip City Keith from the Trailcasters, and the Blazers lost. There was not much defense. The Suns scored 24 threes. The Blazers missed a lot of threes. So were any thoughts from the two of you on that last Blazers-Suns game?
Our guest should go first.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I actually was on a girls' weekend this weekend, and our destination was Southern California, and my whole goal was to get inside the Staples Center. So I did not watch much of that particular game, although I will say that earlier this summer, I decided that this was going to be the year of CJ, and I'm trying to make the hashtag season of CJ catch on.
Ooh.
And I was happy to see that he was scoring well, but he and I need to have words about his free throw shooting.
Oh, yeah, right.
Hashtag season of CJ. I
That's
really like
right.
that. All right, everybody get on board with that.
503
Crossing
for the
my
fans
fingers.
is on board with that. I know that.
Season of CJ. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, so Tara, what game did you happen to catch, or were you able to catch a game in the Staples Center?
Yeah, actually, it was like a Clippers preseason game against Melbourne, so nobody was there, and the tickets basically they practically paid me to go. But I was just realistically, I'm probably not going to be able to go to a Laker or a Clippers game actually in Staples Center for many years. So I thought I'll do it. Have you guys ever been inside the Staples Center?
Nope.
I can't say I have.
Okay, I discovered the most amazing thing. The entire inside of the arena is painted red and black.
What?
I know. Isn't that just, it makes sense because Staples, their colors are red and black.
That was easy. Yep.
I can't believe I didn't get punched. I was super fortunate that it was a preseason game that nobody cared about, because I was going, I can't believe it's red and black in here. If I was a Laker fan or a Clipper fan, I'd be so mad. I'd just be reminded of the Blazers the whole time. And I'm sure some people were just oh my God, who's this woman? But so that was delightful to discover. And then the other fun thing was, because I guess, out of sight, out of mind, I completely forgot that Mo Harkless was on the team.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I was oh yeah. And I heard him announce him, and I'm oh my God, it's Mo. So I got to watch Mo play, and I was standing up and cheering for him, and everybody was who is this crazy person? And everyone was oh, you must really like Mo. And I'm no, Mo needs a lot of encouragement. You guys are going to learn this real quick.
Yep. Oh, man.
But he did play well, and it was great to see him. And oh man, I hope it's a good fit, but I kind of feel after watching him in that preseason press conference, that I think in his heart he's going to still be a Blazer for quite a while.
Oh yeah.
I haven't really seen something too similar to that really ever. Obviously I'm probably in somewhat of a Blazers bubble on my social media, but when was the last time we saw a player? Usually it's the old colloquialisms of, it's just another day on the job. It's it doesn't matter what team, but it's pretty seldom that you find a player who's just come on, man. And I'm sure it helps a little bit that Patterson, I don't believe he was a Clipper the previous season himself either, but I got to side with you on that one too, Tara. But yeah, so that Suns loss, I'm kind of in the same boat. I didn't even, honestly, I had something to do and turned it off after the second half. I started seeing CJ, turn it on and pretty much everything get turned off aside from that. And yeah, but I mean, it was a good game. I live in Phoenix, so there's a lot of buzz right now for the Phoenix Suns. There's a lot of excitement going on. And I think that the re-signing of Oubre is, in my opinion, actually a little bit more significant for that franchise than the overpayment to Ricky Rubio, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a game. CJ showed that a little bit of that extended range, which I like to see. And I think he's in that point in his career where he's always been able to do this more so than his peers, but he's in that point now where it's like, I saw Dame give him the ball late in the shot clock 2 or 3 times just in the small percentage of time that I watched the game, and it was like, bucket. How do you want me to get it? Do you want me to and he's muscling people underneath the basket now, I'm starting to see. You see
the one-footed three-pointer he hit? Beautiful. Yeah, Dame shoots it, gets blocked back to CJ, and right at the end of the shot clock, he hits a one-footed three. He hit it before James Harden. That was awesome.
Yeah. You gotta love seeing that. How do you Tara? Do you think that Harden's going to find a way to navigate these kind of policies that are gunning towards him a little bit? I think there was a revamped travel policy that he's saying, it's part of the game, I'll just figure out a way to do it. I mean, how much do you expect to see that change or affect his game this season?
I think he means it 100%. He'll just figure out how to do it. I mean, that's a huge part of the genius of James Harden, is that whatever the rules are, he figures out how to bend them, just stay close enough. And don't forget that Damian Lillard does the exact same thing. So we can't complain about Harden do it if that's how Damian is getting the calls. And that's what I think. That's the way I think that CJ's going to improve his game this year, which is why I'm like so annoyed he can't make his free throws. Because I really think that CJ, of all the things that he has, figured out over the last few years, there's still a few more things to add. And it just seems like that learning how to draw fouls, especially those really tricky fouls, just seems like, the next step in his evolution. And I think he could get super fantastic at it. He's just got to finish. He's got to put him in the bucket. I mean, he's going to be great at it. And then we'll have Damian and CJ able to do that. So, if Harden is paving the way for that, I can't complain about that, because if our stars are taking the same advantage, that's just how it is.
So it's the same game for all the guys that are playing it, right? So, did we want to just go ahead and dive right into our next topic, Christian?
Oh yeah. So by this time next week, the NBA season will have started, and the Blazers will be taking on the Denver Nuggets. And this is a Denver Nuggets team that, based on total minutes, has its top 10 players returning from a 54-win, 2-seed in the West season, and they're adding a lottery pick who could develop to be their star small forward in Michael Porter Jr. This guy was projected to be a top pick in his draft, and then injuries kind of bumped him down a bit. He still is the 14th pick right there in the lottery. But their final game last season was a down-to-the-wire loss in Game 7 against the Blazers. We narrowly defeated them, moving on to the Western Conference Finals. So these Nuggets are going to want revenge. And for perspective, the Blazers in total minutes last season, actual time spent on the court playing with their teammates, only the top 2 are returning as far as, okay, I didn't say that right, but the top 2 are returning, then down to number 8, Zach Collins. 3 through 7 are all gone as far as total minutes in Game 1. Nurkic will be there eventually, hopefully in January, February, March. We'll see. But in Game 1 this season, the next best is Zach Collins. And after that is 12th and 15th in Rodney Hood and Anthony Simons. So the Blazers, their chemistry is going to take some time, I think. They could very likely go through some significant growing pains. And I think they're still a playoff team with a championship ceiling. And I think Damon Stotts can incorporate new players as well as any other team. But this is a Denver team that's on the rise. So do we think the Blazers will win Game 1 with new players against a revenge-fueled, full-strength Denver Nuggets team?
Miss Tara?
Well, there's a lot in that question. And so I'm going to just go ahead and sidestep it. And So here's the thing, like for people who listen to the Blazers Edge podcast, they may know that I've been complaining all summer about how I'm already so tired of Denver. Because of course we just had them 7-game series and then we play them twice in the preseason and then we open it opening night. And I've just been like a broken record on how tired I am of Denver. That having been said, I'm starting to get a little bit defensive of them because suddenly everyone has just rocketed the Utah Jazz up to the top. And like, I don't know where that came from when you can look at Denver and all those things that you just listed are to their advantage. Plus they have Jokic, who is so much versatility. I mean, Rudy Gobert is good, but he can only do a fraction of the things that Jokic can do. Yeah. So I don't know if the Blazers are going to beat Denver. I certainly think that they can. And like I said, I'm tired of them, but I'm also starting to kind of love this rivalry.
Yeah.
And what you were saying about like the returning minutes, one thing that Cassidy and I talked about the last time we recorded is that we realized that Zach Collins is now one of the longest tenured Blazers on the team.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, who besides Dame and CJ, like who else has been there as long?
Yeah, it's just like Nurk.
I know.
And he's not playing right now.
Right. So I think that there will be I do think there will be a time of adjustment. And, you know, as far as the first games go, I'm really glad that they're going to be playing a lot of them on the road because I think that will allow some time for them to like really be focused on just getting their chemistry right. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if they're going to win. Sorry. I'm not going to come down with a yes or no on that one.
I feel the same way. I mean, last year, the Blazers won the home opener to extend the streak to 18 straight home openers, longest streak in the NBA as far as that specific context goes. And the Blazers at that time extended their Lakers win streak to 16 games. So last year was a big one. I was there for it. You know, Zach Collins had, I think, 6 blocks. It was LeBron's first game as a Laker. This year, I think, is going to be a little different. I think the Blazers are going to struggle in the first game. I would love to be pleasantly surprised. I find a lot of times where players who haven't gotten a lot of time, the other teams aren't prepared for them. Like we saw last year with Nick Stauskas on the Blazers doing really well in that first game, Zach Collins doing really well, Jake Layman at the start of the season doing really well. So I think there's chances for that, but for all the players to do that well together on the Blazers after such a short time playing together, I just don't see it happening immediately, but anything's possible. Dame's a really good leader. This team still has a lot of really good pieces. So all it takes is one good game to beat these Nuggets, and that's the most sure thing in my eyes that could be a loss at the start of the season. I think most of the other games toward the beginning is kind of a toss-up. But hopefully the Blazers can extend that win streak. We'll see. What do you think,
Yeah,
Austin?
I'm kind of with Tara a little bit, and I think you kind of echoed her opinion as well, in that a lot of guys returning for the Nuggets, and it's very odd, right? Because we've heard this as our kind of Band-Aid story for the last 2 to 3 seasons about, well, you know, we have team chemistry, and to some degree it actually really rang true and resulted in a lot of success, the most success that we've had in recent years. But now here are the Portland Trailblazers completely revamped, and the Nuggets are the deepest team in the league. But I did hear a really interesting sentiment when I was watching that first Nuggets preseason game, in that, you know, the Nuggets don't necessarily have that one guy. If they do, it's Jokic, who can just be that star player who is just taking over at times. And I just don't know if that matters so much in a first game of the year. I think that matters in a game 7 on the road. I think that absolutely matters then. But the only thing that really makes me lean towards the Blazers' success is that it's in Veterans Memorial Coliseum. It's at home. There's never going to be more buzz. There hasn't been more buzz in recent years about the Blazers in general going into a season. You know, we have a new season. There's a lot of unknown, and that kind of breeds excitement. And there's been a lot of success. So I think that I've seen a lot of people that were already Blazers fans really ramp it up in recent years, myself including. So there's going to be a really large crowd at that game, and they're going to make it tough for the Nuggets. But I gotta echo what you two said, in that it's going to be a toss up for me.
Yeah.
I want to add on to what you said about leadership. One of the things that I always do when I talk to people from other fan bases, I always ask, who's the leader of that team? And I'm kind of surprised frequently that people really like kind of hesitate. And like, it's just been, we've been so used to having Damian Lillard as the leader of the Trailblazers that I think we really take for granted what he does as a leader for that team. So, you know, like when I asked last year, I asked somebody who was the leader of the Nuggets, and he thought about it and he was like, I'm going to do an Adam Mares, an imitation. Well, you know, really, it's kind of Mike Malone. And I was like, what? But like, you know, it's something that I think you're right. Like, one of the advantages that the Blazers do have is that like they know for sure who's in charge, and it's not just like who's the best player or who gets to the gym earliest. It's so much more than that with Damian Lillard.
Absolutely. And I mean, a coach is Mike. I can see that though a little bit, right? Like when you have that much depth, and it's. I don't know how slow it's been acquired. It's definitely been slower than other big markets, but they have a lot of depth that's, you know, I don't know. It hasn't been there over 4 or 5 seasons, you know. It's 3 seasons, you know, and yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling a little bit. Christian, your thoughts?
Yeah. I'll say back when I was living in Colorado, I went to a lot of Nuggets games. And the season that Nurk was traded to the Blazers, I went to the home opener there, which was against the Blazers. And, you know, it was this whole big thing about like, well, Nurk's this guy that we thought all this stuff, but we also think Jokic is going to be so good. So it's just like the beginnings of the confusion on what they're going to do with their two centers. And eventually, of course, it went to Jokic. Nurkic went to the bench. And I noticed that in the next Blazers game that I saw in Denver, which was, where the heck is that other big center that was supposed to be so big, you know? It was, and they, you know, there was the talk about like the Joker, Jokic, and then I don't know, it was just a whole bunch of jokes about that. But when I was there, my understanding in that first game was, when I looked at the team, I just thought there were a bunch of young dudes who were just kind of chilling. It reminded me of how we think of the Minnesota Timberwolves a lot right now, where it's just kind of a little immature and not so focused on actually winning, at least how Jimmy Butler seems to view the Timberwolves. So that was kind of how I felt when I went to that first Nuggets game. I was like, are these just a bunch of young dudes and this new coach just like chilling? What are they doing?
Well, they're the third youngest team in the league.
Yeah, right.
That was my Denver media impression. Like, I swear, if I heard that one more time, I was gonna just throw whatever I was listening to across the room. They're the third youngest team in the league.
I saw a great piece on, and I'll get through this quick because I know we still want to highlight the first 10 games here, and then a little bit of news, and then jump into what Tara's got going on a little bit, but. Oh goodness! Now I completely spaced. Oh no! Oh no!
Denver locker room, young guys, third youngest team in the league.
Oh yeah. There's basically things that everybody says, but you know how much sustenance is there to it. There was a great piece on Blazers Edge about the Blazers are going to run. And I wish I could think of the author of that piece right now. We always try to give credit, but they actually superimposed an image of prior to the first season ever in 1970, how the newspaper was saying that about the Blazers, right? So that was the headline before the Blazers were even ever played their first game at all. And I'm curious to see how much that narrative is reiterated just over and over again, and how much truth there's going to be to that. But there's definitely some go-tos in terms of where teams fall for their narratives, their self-descriptive narratives. But Christian, did you want to?
For these first 10 games of the season, so to clarify, for the most part, we're not feeling all that good about beating the Nuggets in the first game. Oh, and to clarify, it's not in the Memorial Coliseum. That was just the preseason game. Unfortunately, that would be epic to have in a regular season game too. Also, Terry Stotts wearing 70s apparel would be awesome in a regular season game too. But as far as the first 10 games of the season, I think the best way for us to get through this is if I just kind of give my ideas and then see what you guys think. So I'm thinking the Blazers are going to win like 4 to 6 of the first 10 games. Last year they won 7 of 10, and the 3 that they lost were really close. One was an overtime loss, 125-124 to the Washington Wizards. One was to the Heat. That was a disappointing one. And then one was to the Lakers. It was ended the streak of the Blazers beating the Lakers. This season, first game against the Nuggets, and then they go on a 4-game road trip immediately after that. First is going to be against the Kings. I think the Blazers are going to win this one. Obviously, the Kings are going to want revenge because their last game of the season was also against the Blazers when Anthony Simons scored 37 in a comeback win to end the 2019 season. I think Dame playing in California, Dame always just has a little bit more motivation. The Kings are on the up and up, but with new coach and Luke Walton, I just don't think they're going to have it together enough to hang on to this 3-seed Blazer team, even if there is a lot of change. So I think the Blazers will win that one. I kind of expect the Blazers to lose the next 2 in Texas. They're playing against the Mavericks, obviously in Dallas, and then against the Spurs in San Antonio. I can just see the Blazers struggling toward the beginning on a long road trip, and Dame needing to corral the guys and tell them, hey, like, what are we here for? We're here to win. Game 5's against the Thunder. I think the Blazers are going to win. I think Dame struggles against Chris Paul normally, but I don't think the Thunder are a good enough team. I think that they're better than some people are saying. I don't think they're going full-on tank, but I just don't think they're good enough. Hopefully Hassan Whiteside plays well against Steven Adams. But yeah, I think that's where the Blazers get their second win, is that game 5, 5th game against the Thunder. And then at home against the 76ers, that one really could go either way. Joel Embiid is really dominant, and I think the best thing that the Blazers have going for them is that Ben Simmons only knows how to score inside. So the fact that we have 2 really good interior defenders is going to be very helpful in that game. And the Blazers destroyed the 76ers twice last season. So I'll take the Blazers winning that, but I obviously wouldn't be surprised if they lost. Next is going to be in Golden State at the Warriors. The Warriors obviously don't have Klay Thompson or Kevin Durant that they had last season, but they will have D'Angelo Russell. I'm going to take the Blazers winning that one. It could be a toss-up, but if I'm taking Dame or Steph Curry, let's go Dame. And then at the Clippers immediately after that, I think the Blazers are going to lose that one. I think the Blazers are going to struggle against Paul. Well, actually, Paul George won't be playing at the start of the season, but even so, I think, Mo's going to be a little excited to take on his old team. I think that they have a really good team and Kawhi Leonard, and I think it's going to be hard for the Blazers to stop them. And then 2 games at home, Nets and Hawks. I think there's no way the Blazers lose to the Hawks. And the Nets are another fresh team that I think is still going to be working on things, and I think they won't be able to win so far from home. So what are your thoughts on the first 10 games of the season? I just listed off my 6 wins. I think they're more likely to lose more than that than they are to win more than that. But that first game against the Kings, and then the 3 other games on the road. What are you thinking,
Miss Tara?
Well, so I am not good at making predictions. I'm terrible at making predictions. So
Same.
I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be watching for in the first 10 games of the season. I'm very curious about how the front court rotation is going to go. I'm really curious about how much crashing under the basket there's going to be between guys fighting for rebounds. I'm actually kind of encouraged in the preseason because I thought there was just going to be like Zach Collins and Hassan Whiteside like crashing into each other and both falling down on the ground constantly, but they seem to be in a pretty good rhythm in terms of not taking up each other's space. So I'm very curious how that works. I'm very curious about how the front court rotation is going to work in the second unit. So I think we're going to learn a lot about we're going to learn a ton from these first 10 games. Like I said earlier, I'm really glad that they're going to be on the road for a good chunk of them because I think it's good to like get out of the city and just like be all together all the time.
Yeah.
So the other thing I'm going to be watching for is, are they actually going to continue to run? Like, I think you said that, Austin, like, you know, are they actually going to run? Because man, Hazonia and Bazemore are so fun to watch. And all of that, you know, transition that we've seen in the preseason has been really fun, but yeah, will they keep it up? I don't know. Is Anthony ready? You know, like, are they going to expect him to shoot and handle the ball, or will they just let him go in there and be a shooter? And then finally, the last thing is, will Scal play? Because he's kind of like my guy that I'm like super interested in this season. And I really like what he's been showing us in preseason, but, you know, like, that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll see him once the season starts. But I'm finding him a better shooter than I ever thought he was going to be. At that same game that Anthony scored 37, Scal scored 29. So don't forget about that. So those are the things I'm watching for. Front court rotation. Does the transition running, does that keep up? Is Anthony ready? And do we see Scal?
I like it. Yeah, and you know, I talked briefly in my last episode, about Moses Brown as well. I think that, you know, obviously, just because of timing and situation, he probably won't pan out as a Blazer, but I think that he's going to be really great in the league. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting front court things going on. I'll go very quickly here because we definitely want to hear a little bit more about what you got going on, Tara. What I have is, and this is because Christian strong-armed me and said he was going to break my fingers. Christian? I have
That's not very nice.
I actually have a loss noted for our home opener. I have Kings as a win, Mavs as a loss. I think that with all that's going to be going on in our front court, Luka and Kristaps are going to be an issue, and I think that Kristaps is playing very well as I thought he was going to be playing in the preseason and when he makes his comeback. The Spurs, I have a W. Thunder, I have a W. I think that Chris Paul Dame dynamic is if it hasn't already begun to shift, it's gonna really start swinging Dame's way just because of Father Time. 76ers, that's a W, but that could and I only said that because of home. If that was played on neutral turf, I think that their height is going to be an issue for a lot of teams this year, similar to the Lakers if they decide to go that route. But the Warriors I have listed as a W just because obviously they've lost that guy named Kevin Durant and will be playing at home. And they've got their own rotation to sort out a little bit over there. Clippers, that's going to be a loss. I'm sorry. Did I say that Warriors game was at home by accident? Potentially.
I don't know, but it is away. Yeah.
That's away, but I still think that we're going to come out with a W there. But the Clippers I have listed as a loss, just because it's going to be, it's going to be a second game in LA, and obviously Kawhi still being present. And then I have 2 Ws to finish it out at home, but definitely can't underestimate Kyrie Irving or Trae Young. So I think that Dame being that improved defender is really going to help in those matchups. So ultimately I have a predicted 6-3. But yeah, so it sounds like we're relatively optimistic as a group here. Christian, I know that, did you want to add, or Tara, did you want to add anything on Nazir or Powell and their injuries? And then anything on Nurk switching to Rich Paul as his agent?
I'll just say Pau Gasol, I'm kind of expecting that he won't be playing a whole ton of games this season. I'm sure he will be able to contribute plenty of times, and that hopefully we can be big fans of his. But I really haven't watched him much since he played on the Lakers. So, I mean, Pau Gasol, I'm not expecting all that much from a player standpoint. I'm sure that he's teaching Scal and Zach a lot about what it means to be a winner and to be a big man who does more than just score or rebound or block. And then Nasir Little, I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing he's going to end up in the G League for at least a good chunk of this season. So hopefully he comes back soon enough that he can start developing more and more. But I'm not expecting him to crack the rotation for quite a while.
All right. Tara?
I don't really have anything to add except to say that I have not gotten used to Pau Gasol as a Blazer because he's always going to be Kobe's boy.
Seriously.
And that's just weird. And I'm sure at the end of the season we'll be just so grateful that he was here. But it's taken me a while to get adjusted to that.
Seriously.
All right, Christian, we had some last minute wrap up questions. We want to go ahead and interview Miss Biggs here and ask her a little bit about what she's got going on and some of her favorite Blazers memories.
Yes. So Tara, I just want to say Austin and I are both big fans of yours. I remember probably the first podcast I ever listened to, Blazers or otherwise. Wow, it just got dark, I realized. First podcast I ever listened to was Blazers Edge podcast with you talking on it. And I was in Germany in 2017, and I had no reception where I lived, so I'd walk down to the store and get Wi-Fi and listen in. So it's been a good memory listening to Blazers Edge. And I'm not much of a podcast listener, but I definitely listen to you. So I was just curious, how long have you been with Blazers Edge, and do you have a favorite memory from your time on the podcast?
Oh my God, that's amazing. First of all, thank you so much for telling me that. It makes me feel so good that somebody's listening.
Totally.
Oh, that's so awesome. Oh my God, thank you so much. My kids, I have kids, 3 kids, probably about your guys' age, like mid-20s, right?
Yep.
So they think it's hilarious when they say that their mom has a podcast.
Oh, so good.
So anyway, I started podcasting with Blazers Edge probably, I think, 4 years ago. And Dan and I are just entering our 4th season together. And before that, I had the podcast with Joe, and she and I were doing the podcast like a couple times a month just to do something different. And it was super fun. I'd never podcasted before. I had to completely teach myself how to do it, but it was a good time for me to learn something new because my kids had all gone off to college and I needed a new hobby. So that was how I got started with the podcasting with Blazers Edge. And so then I started hosting the weekly podcast with Dan. Like I said, we're going into our 4th season together. And then a couple of years ago, so Joe, my original podcast partner, Joe, went off to see the world and travel the world, and she lives in Alaska now. And so I started doing podcasts with another woman because I really enjoyed talking, just having an opportunity to talk with women about basketball. Not that I don't like talking about basketball with men. That's like totally fine. But it's just like we have different conversations when we have different lived experiences. And I knew that there were a lot of women who listened to the Blazers Edge podcast, and I thought they might enjoy, listening in on some of our conversations, and it turned out a lot of people like listening to the conversations. So anyway, so Cassidy and I are entering our 2nd season of Women's Hoops and Talks, where we just talk with women about basketball. That's a little bit less Blazer centered, although now that the Blazer season has started, we're probably going to concentrate more on talking about the Blazers. But when you were asking about like favorite memories, some of the really fun people that we've been able to talk to with the Women's Hoops and Talks podcast. We talked to Stephanie Reddy right before the NBA finals. And, she is just like, I didn't really know much about her until I looked her up and found out that she was a pioneer in so many different ways. She was like one of the first female coaches in the NCAA of a men's team. She was just breaking barriers in media broadcasting. And then she gave us a whole tutorial on like what VR programming is like, and it was super cool. So and then when on the Blazers Edge podcast, one of my favorite things that we get to do is occasionally we talk to Ben Golliver, and I just think that he is one of the smartest, sharpest, funniest people writing about basketball out there. And we're just like, it's amazing to me that he came from Portland and started with Blazers Edge. And not that I'm thinking that my trajectory is going to go that way, but it is fun to like have a hometown guy to talk with about the Blazers. And then one last like super fun, awesome memory from the podcast is I got to talk to his partner on the Open Floor Globe, Andrew Sharp. And that was just a super fun experience for me because when I listened to the Open Floor podcast, I don't know if you guys listen to it, but I highly recommend it. Those two are so smart. I always think of like Ben Golliver as kind of like my podcast partner, Dan, and just like the super duper duper smart, go deep on something. And then his partner's a little bit goofier and, is still knowledgeable, but like cracks some more jokes and like has to kind of like talk down the guy who's kind of inflating things a little bit. So I was kind of related to Andrew. So it was really fun. One of my highlights was being able to actually just talk to him and have a conversation with him. Oh, and then I finally got my dream of a mom to mom conversation, which was super
Yes.
exciting. I got to talk to Tamika Simons, who is Anthony's mom. And for ages, I've just wanted to talk, like I said, mom to mom, to like find out what's it like, not that my kids aren't fantastic, because they are fantastic, but they're not in the NBA. And so like, yeah, I wanted to know what it's like to like raise a kid who is that talented and that focused and that driven and like has such a rare talent and path to, you know, so it was amazing to get to talk to her. So those are some of my highlights.
So cool.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's so cool. I thought it was so cool that you had Anthony Simon's mom on your podcast. I'm like, wow, what a perfect podcast to have. I don't know, to have a mom on. It's
Very on brand.
Yeah. Can I take 2 more minutes just to tell you about the Women's Hoops and Talks meetups that we do?
Let's do.
Okay, so
I was going to ask about that actually.
Yeah, so when Joe and I first started doing our podcast a long time ago, we were like, okay, it's great. We're going to like reach out to all the groups of women around town who get together and watch basketball, because we thought that was a thing. And of course it wasn't a thing. We were like, oh, okay. So there aren't any like meetups for women who watch basketball. I guess we better start one. So we started that. We're going into our 4th season of doing Women's Hoops and Talks meetup. We do them once a month, always during an away game, because a lot of people attend games, and we do them at the McMinimans on Broadway. And it's almost all women, because a lot of women like to bring their husbands or their partners or their sons or whatever. But the whole point of the Women's Hoops and Talks meetup is that like the women have the floor, and like it's our takes are the ones that everybody's there to hear, because it's just, you know, some of the women are, you know, have been season ticket holders since the first season. Some of the women have never, like, we've also had women who've never watched a game before, but thought it sounded fun and were like too intimidated to like, you know, go like try to watch it with somebody else. So we were like, no, come and watch it with us. So we try to make it comfortable for you no matter what your level of interest is. And so there's no like right way to be a fan. So if you like to watch the game because you think the uniforms are pretty and you want to come and watch the game with us, that's totally fine. And if you like to watch the games because you like to yell at the refs and you think that they're out to get you, that's fine too.
Oh yeah.
So we do these once a month, and as soon as we started meeting, we realized that like once a month wasn't enough. So we started a Facebook group, and it's super active during games. And it's funny because a lot of us go between like either Reddit and our Facebook group or Blazers Edge and our Facebook group or whatever. And we go back and forth because the conversations are just different. And I'm not placing any judgment on whether or not one kind of conversation is better. It's just that they're really different. And sometimes you just want to have a conversation with other women who want to talk about, you know, mothering stuff and like being worried about them because we think they don't get much sleep and we think they have bags under their eyes, or like, why does Zach Collins look gray and sweaty? Oh, last night was his 21st birthday. Oh no, like what happened? So we just have different conversations, and I feel really proud that I'm like helped get this platform started, so people could just be who they are, and that's what we try to do. So
you've paved some roads here, because now we have outlets like Rip Twitty as well, and
oh my gosh,
others.
Those Rip Twitty ladies, I love them so much, and I'm so excited about all the stuff they do. And one of the things that I love about what they do is when they have meetups, they often do like they'll do like a drive for, you know, feminine products or whatever that they then go donate to other people. And I was like super inspired by that. So we started with our groups doing volunteer shifts every couple of months. So we got a group of us from Women's Hoops and Talks to go do the food bank, and we worked a shift at the food bank, and we all wore our Blazer gears and talked about the Blazers. And it was also awesome because the firemen showed up that day. It was like super, like, wow, this is awesome. And then we just did a shift at the children's book bank. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can be about more than just the basketball and give back to the community. And a lot of that was inspired by some of the stuff that Rip Twitty's been doing too.
Nice.
Cool. That's
all right.
Cool. I got to get my mom connected to the Women's Hoops and Talk meetups.
That's why I always say, tell your mom whenever I tweet about them.
Absolutely. I'll talk to her about it.
Tell your mom.
Yep. So a
love
couple quick questions for you that we ask all of our guests. First, who is your favorite non-All-Star Blazer of all time?
Well, Al-Farouq Aminu is way up there. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I am like was his number one fan in Portland. # Aminu Appreciation Society. I respect and acknowledge the Aminu Hive, but I myself was the chairperson of the Aminu Appreciation Society for the finer things in life. So yes, I loved Al-Farouq Aminu. I should know this, but was Kevin Duckworth ever an All-Star? I feel like he was maybe once. But I love.
I don't think he was, but let me look it up real quick.
I feel like he may have been once. But anyway, he and I share a birthday, so I absolutely loved him. Oh, and Andre Miller. Andre Miller is like the folk hero of women's hoops and talks. So those are probably the three that I would say: Al-Farouq, Andre Miller, and Kevin Duckworth.
Duckworth was actually a 2-time All-Star, both with the Blazers.
So I'll have to come up with somebody else.
I know. So another one is, what is your favorite Blazer game that you've ever attended?
I don't know. They kind of run together for me.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the most memorable was the one where poor Nurkic got hurt. Obviously that was not my favorite, and I didn't get to attend the any of the like the OKC one, but one of my favorite ones to watch. Okay, we had a meetup during the 4 overtime game. We were having a women's hoops and talks meetup, and we were dying. Oh my god! And it was like we felt so bad because like the people from McMenamins were there, and we were like, I'm so sorry, and they're like, it's fine. We're like, it just keeps going. The game won't end. We're sorry.
I had some high school guys over. I have guys that I hang out with regularly, and we were playing video games, and I was like, hey, is it all right if I put up the Blazers game? It's almost over. And they're like, oh, sure. And then that was the 4th quarter, and then the 4 overtimes happened, and by the end, everyone was a Blazers fan. Oh, yeah. It was so good.
Yeah, I remember watching the Brandon Roy game against Dallas. My son was playing soccer in Eugene, and we were heading home, and we turned on the radio, and we were going to listen to it on the way home, and they were down by like 24. We were like, all right, let's stop at Tracktown Pizza and get some pizza, and we're not in any rush to listen to this. And so we went to Tracktown. Then of course we were watching the game, and it got closer and closer, and Brandon Roy went off, and by the end of the game, like the entire restaurant, including all the cooks and dishwashers and everybody, we were all standing in together watching that game together. So that's definitely one of my most memorable games to watch.
That's so awesome. Good. That's awesome. Any other questions we have here, Christian?
I don't have any. If you got, at least not for the podcast right now, but if you got any.
Well, I don't believe that I have any at the moment. I think it's awesome what you're doing over there, Tara. I think that, like I said, you guys have paved roads, and you've been doing this long before Christian and I probably even graduated high school, let alone could drink a beer legally. Hey, and I mean that positively.
I know.
You have a lot to offer to the community, and you sure as hell keep doing it. So we appreciate you. Obviously, did you want to give a quick shout out as to where the folks can find you and your specifics of your tags and whatnot?
Yeah, and thank you again so much for having me and saying all the nice things that you said about me. It makes me feel really good to know that people are listening. It's awesome. What I love about basketball is it brings together people, and I've met so many people that I never would have met for any other reason. It's just like that one little introduction that we need to like become friends and get to know each other. And I think it's amazing. You can find me on Twitter at TCB-Biggs, and you can follow the Blazers Edge podcast, or you can just follow Blazers Edge at Blazers Edge, and you can find the Hoops and Talks podcast at Hoops and Talks. Both of those podcasts are in the same podcast feed. So if you just if you just subscribe to the Blazers Edge podcast, you'll get both of those. And also, if you're interested in the Women's Hoops and Talks meetup, I have all of the dates for all of our planned out meetups pinned to my Twitter page. Awesome. So just go to my Twitter profile and you'll see all the dates. Yep. And I hope to see you guys there. Well, except for Austin, you're in Phoenix. But guess what? Have I got a treat for you? The Women's Hoops and Talks ladies are going on the road to Phoenix this year. So we'll be there in December. Yeah, last year we went to Denver together. There were like 10 of us last year, and we're going to try to get a similar size group. And this year we're going to Phoenix. So we might have to look you up.
Oh,
That is
absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening today. Definitely go ahead and locate us on any major streaming platform, be it Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever you fancy, or on Twitter at Peeps in Plaid. And thank you, Tara, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we run it up to the max. Running straight ahead, we ain't never looking back. They try to tell me it's the road like I'm Jack, but I ain't never leaving, trying to put us on the map. So we run it, yeah, we run it, run it, run it, run it, run it, run it. We run it up, run it, run it, run it, run it, run it, run it, run it. We run it up, yeah, we run it up, yeah, we run it to the bank. Hey, yeah, we turn it up, yeah, we turn it to the crank. Okay, fly Lil Robin and we in that Bruce Wayne. Bolting to the bag like the name was Usain. Yeah, we RUNITUP. Run it up, running up a score, balling on these new teams on a new thing, and it don't about no hoop dreams. Nah, still shooting shots, and if I miss no move swings, got a gift and I'ma use it step by step. I got the blueprint to success. I thought you knew it. You was next and now you blew it. Talk cream, I got the cool whip. I'm the teacher, you the student. You're gonna ask why is this rap? I speak it fluent. Ain't no miscues or issues. Change if I diss you. If you gonna come at me, just know nobody gonna miss you. Ain't no miscues or issues. Change if I diss you. If you gonna come at me, just know nobody gonna miss you. Nah, yeah, we run it up to the max. Running straight ahead, we ain't never looking back. They try to tell me it's the road like I'm Jack, but I ain't never leaving, trying to put us on the map. So we